The thing I always liked about Magic is how fairly simple it is to explain to new players, while leaving an enormous room for exploration. Let's go back to the basics for a moment. There's a few different types of cards. You need lands that provide resources so you can do stuff in the game. Then there's creatures, which you use to attack your opponent, instants and sorceries, which are like action cards that do a thing and then go away, and lastly, artifacts and enchantments that just sit around and do stuff. You both get 20 life, and your goal is to beat your opponent down to 0. How? Well, the main way is through combat with your creatures. And that is in fact how most, if not all, beginner level games are going to go. You both play some creatures, maybe some combat tricks or support spells, but mainly you're going to swing at each other and gradually decrease those life totals. And it's no surprise then that creatures are by far the most populous card type in the game. There's currently nearly 15,000 of them, while other card types find themselves at around 3,000. So even after you learn about mill, burn, or alternative win conditions, this idea of a combat-focused game, the so-called Magic as Richard Garfield intended it, will still remain deeply rooted in your head. It's only natural then that a commander centered heavily on those concepts would end up very high on the charts in terms of popularity. And that is exactly what happened with Isshin, Two Heavens as One. In my Atraxa video, I mentioned how her card utilizes the least number of words out of all the top commanders, that being 12. Well, here I need to admit that she gets there by cheating a little. Atraxa showcases 5 keywords in total, which means that if you actually want to explain what the card does, you're going to need a lot more words than that. Isshin's word count is 22, but his effect is extremely straightforward. Whenever an ability goes off thanks to a creature attacking, you do it again. Easy as that. The even simpler version, and what your Isshin deck is going to be doing most of the time, would be all my attack triggers happen twice. Which is a little inaccurate though. More on that later. Isshin himself could have easily had something more going on, maybe haste, menace, first strike, or even ward, which is annoyingly popular nowadays, but no. All Isshin does is this. And it's honestly charming. As I've said, the main driving force behind Isshin's simple design is how it speaks to the core ideas of the game. With him on the battlefield, you basically get rewarded for playing the game the classic way. No convoluted combos, alternative win conditions, strange strategies, just honest creatures stomping on your opponent's faces. When I went into making this video, one question kept popping up in my head. Why is Isshin, currently the number 3 commander in the past 2 years, so dramatically more popular than the similar Wulfgar of Icewind Dale, who finds himself all the way down among the 500s? And then I figured it would be a great thought exercise to look at these two gentlemen side by side and examine all the differences. First up, Isshin is cheaper by 2 mana, which means you're much more likely to cast him early and start doing whatever you want to be doing. One of the most fun parts of playing Commander is, well, playing your commander, and especially if it's one so central to the themes of your deck, you will take the opportunity to cast them 2 turns earlier. Speaking about the casting cost, Isshin provides 1 more color of mana, while trading green for white and black. The access to more colors can be crucial for having the opportunity of including more diverse support pieces, or just synergistic cards in general. In this case, it also warrants pointing out how different the pieces you get access to here are between green and white-black. While the green attack triggers usually focus on getting more mana, like with Cloth, Radha, or Primeval Herald, or growth, like Tuya or Goreclaw, leaning towards more stompy builds focusing on big spells, the combination of white-black offers a much more aggro-focused gameplay, resulting in more dynamic plays. For examples, let's look at cards like Brutal Horde Chief, Commissar Severina Rain, or Mardu Ascendancy. The preference between these 2 archetypes is of course subjective, and both offer fun and interesting gameplay, but I can honestly see how the more aggressively oriented Mardu color combination would best rule in this situation, combined once again with the fact that Isshin is cheaper to cast. Wulfgar, on the other hand, comes with the additional power compared to the samurai, and has the potential to grow even more thanks to his doubled melee ability, which can get him up to a 10-10 under the right circumstances, something that Isshin is unable to do. It's honestly surprising how Isshin actually does absolutely nothing on his own, especially after the commanders we've already seen in this series, who get a lot of work done by themselves. But I think that this is a positive rather than a negative in this particular design. Time and time again we see commanders who are both setups and payoffs in one. But with Isshin, his passivity plays into the simple and frankly fair design nicely. You actually need to put thought into designing your deck like an actually functioning deck. Isshin is only here to make it better. For the next difference between Isshin and Wulfgar, I'd like to ask you to read both cards carefully. Did you catch it? It once again has to do with flexibility, something I talked about back in my Atraxa video. Wulfgar says, if a creature you control attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, while Isshin goes out of his way to only say if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability, etc. It's subtle, but do you know what it means? It means that cards such as the new Aurelia, Brina, Combat Calligrapher, Deathkiss, Emberwild Captain, Karazikar, or Kazul are all relevant here. It means that Isshin, by omitting 2 words, suddenly opens the door towards defensive strategies as well as offensive ones, or even goad strategies that thrive off your opponents attacking each other. It's amazing how such a seemingly straightforward effect can have very diverse possibilities when it comes to building a deck around it. Lastly, Isshin was released in a Premier Standard Legal expansion, while Wulfgar appeared in a Commander companion product for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. This might be speculation, but I believe that in addition to all the reasons I mentioned, Isshin was simply noticed by more players, as the 4 Premier expansions each year are the main focus of most players. For this reason, Isshin can also be found on Arena with its Commander variant of Brawl, which is sure to attract some attention from players who want to try and build a deck around him, while Wulfgar remains just another bulk card from the plentiful Commander sets. Now that I've praised the card into oblivion, let's do some proper nitpicking too. My main gripe with the card is how prevalent these twinning effects have become. 19 cards that let certain effects trigger an additional time have come out since the iconic Panharmonicon, and new ones seem to be arriving every set or so. Combined with the game's affection for copying and doubling in the recent years, that's arguably a bit too much for my taste. Isshin's effect is still very novel and interesting for reasons we discussed earlier, so I'll let it slide. But personally, I'd appreciate it if we could maybe let some things happen just once in this game. Secondly, I'm wondering about the flavor. We know very little about Isshin, and most of his character and story can be gathered from his card. According to an article by David McDarby, link in description, Isshin is based on the real-life figure of Miyamoto Musashi, and the doubling effect comes from his 2-katana fighting style, as you can see in the art, which is a technique often attributed to Musashi. Well, why does he double other attackers' abilities then? Wouldn't this idea translate better to maybe a double strike-centric card? Isshin's actual effect would much better fit the character of a cunning leader, who stays back and creates a strategy that emphasizes the strengths of each individual soldier under their command. But Risona is the leader of the Asari uprising. Isshin is just a well-trained warrior who decided to tag along. Yet, his card displays none of his own combat prowess, instead focusing on being a potent support piece. The idea is there, 2 swords, 2 attack triggers, sure, but once you look under the surface, it kind of stops working for me. What does still work for me, though, is the art. Ryan Pancoast's illustration of Isshin 2 Heavens as One is the perfect summary of what went well with our return to Kamigawa. The original blog had gathered an equal number of fans and controversies regarding the sometimes too literal interpretations of Japanese folklore and culture, as well as the mostly lackluster mechanics. As the events of that blog took place in the past, though, a solution presented itself in the form of a large time skip. I'll be honest, when I first heard about the plan of going full cyberpunk with Kamigawa, I was hesitant to say the least. But man, did the design team deliver. Isshin is a samurai, an iconic part of both Japanese history and the appeal of the original Kamigawa. His armor draws inspiration from the real-world samurai tradition, while not being afraid to get modernized and stylized to fit the new aesthetic. And then there's his signature blades, built like classic katana, but immediately you can see there's much more to them, possibly magic and/or technology. The darkened background, lovely play with colors by the way, also tells us a lot about the state of the plane some hundreds of years later. We see tradition, mostly represented by the architecture, seamlessly mixed in with modern technology and the neon lights. Kamigawa in this age still resembles its old self. We find all the things that drew us in the first place, like the samurai, but it has been refined. It has looked back and fixed most of the problems that were present, leaving us with something that is just so fun to explore and experience. And all of that can be found on the art of Isshin, Two Heavens as One. But it's not just the art. Isshin's whole card represents this duality beautifully. His effect takes the core idea of combat that has been present in Magic from the beginning and combines it with a twinning payoff that is synonymous with the game's modern era. His design embodies both the past of Kamigawa and its current age. His story is that of a man becoming disillusioned by the status quo and starting to fight for something new. For a long time, I've been wondering what the two heavens represent. And now I think I have figured it out. They represent the old and the new, tradition and innovation. You cannot dismiss the old heaven, as it is the foundation upon which you can build. But the new heaven is equally as important, for without progress, you become stale and stagnant. Isshin takes those two ideas, the two heavens, and puts them into one, represented by one beautifully simple magic card. Hello, and thank you for watching until the end, and also for your incredible support, especially on my Yuriko video. Much appreciated. This one turned out quite a bit longer than all the others in the series. It's just so incredible to me that you can take this super simple magic card with just one paragraph of text and talk about so much around it. I won't drag it much longer than that. I just want to say thank you and stick around for other videos. I'm thinking I'll do a little break from the Top Commanders design series and try to focus on some other ideas I've had for a long time and I didn't quite get to them yet. So stay tuned for that and have a great day. Bye.